Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome back to Brickwall Pictures. Today I'm doing a Guy Ritchie tier list. I've done tier lists in the past for a whole litany of filmmakers and a couple martial artists too. So check the description for a playlist of all those videos. Today we're talking about Guy Ritchie, a filmmaker who has had some major ups and downs throughout the course of his career. I am doing almost all of his movies. He's got one, I think it's called Swept Away or something, that I couldn't track down, and I didn't want to hold off the whole tier list on that. And then I'm not fucking watching his Aladdin remake, so sorry. If you wanted me to talk about that, I'm not going to do it. I'm not watching a blue Will Smith in a live-action remake of Aladdin. I'm not going to put myself through that punishment. I tend to avoid movies that I know I will not like. And we're going to get started here with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This was his debut feature film. It was also, it's not just how Guy Ritchie got his start, it's also how Jason Statham got his start. It's interesting when you go back and watch his first couple movies, Lock, Stock, and Snatch, now that Jason Statham is a big international action star, because he was an action star guy in these movies yet, right? Like Lock, Stock, and Snatch both have a tiny little bit of action, and it's not Jason Statham doing it. I mean, there's one bit in Snatch where he like swings a baseball bat a little bit, but he's not like, he's not like kicking ass. He's more like getting his ass kicked in this movie. By the time, you get to Wrath of Man, now he's embracing that action star side of him. Jason Statham, he's more like a comedic performer in these couple early movies, because that's what these are. Guy Ritchie started with his first two, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Snatch are his like British gangster movies, and they are great at that, and I kind of think that's like his sweet spot. Lock, Stock is hilarious. It's a really inventive script. It's low budget, definitely shows, but in a way that's more charming rather than anything negative. And maybe it's a little negative in some regards, and it might be more of a negative for some people. I think it's hilarious. Vinnie Jones is really funny in it. He has a better character to work with in Snatch, but he's good in this as well. I think he's Big Chris and then there's Little Chris. Vinnie Jones, if you don't know, he was like a rugby player before he was in this movie, and then he was in some subsequent movies. The cast is really fun. Not everyone is a fantastic actor in Lock, Stock, but like most of the cast is pretty good. Guy Ritchie came up with some clever ways to get around the budgetary limitations. Like, there's this confrontation where all of these characters that we've been seeing throughout the movie are now coming to a head in a big explosive gunfight. And it's pretty clear he did not have the budget to properly execute that big violent showdown. So instead of making a really watered down version of that showdown, he made the choice to instead put the camera outside of the room, and we just see a window with like the blinds down getting progressively fucked up as we hear the gunfight going on. It's a really clever way to handle it while working within your budget. I rewatched it again recently before making this list, and I gotta say it didn't hold up quite as well as I remembered it holding up. There were some more issues with it. If I hadn't rewatched it recently, I think I would have just popped it an S, because I love this movie. Seeing it again recently brought it down a little bit for me, and I think it's an A now. And if you're someone who like the budget, you need a movie to be like glossy and like really, strong in production values, this would be much lower for you, because it is very rough around the edges. It'd probably be like B or even C if those elements are really intrinsic to the movie experience for you. You'll have a harder time with it. But next up is The Man from U.N.C.L.E. This is a movie based on the old TV show, the Spy series. You have a buddy duo, or more like a warring buddy duo. They're not buddies, they're at odds throughout most of the movie, of Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer, who are pretty good at pairing, and that like I feel like people kind of mix them up sometimes, like confuse who's who and whatnot. They're both like chiseled jaw, handsome actor guy. That's kind of like their mode. And then they've both shown more range in other projects. Like Armie Hammer gave really good performances in like Call Me by Your Name and in something like Free Fire, and then Henry Cavill has been impressing in like The Witcher. I think he does a good job in that series, and Mission Impossible Fallout, I think he was really good in. So, and then Armie Hammer, of course, there's all the whole crazy cannibal controversy. So I won't hold that against this film, though. The Man from U.N.C.L.E, I feel like it was forgotten the second it came out. I actually didn't get around to it until way later. I ended up checking this one out on a library DVD, like multiple years after it came out because I just wasn't really interested when it came out and I saw this lukewarm reviews. It's like a spy action movie where the action is awful. Like the action is shot and choreographed. It's not at all enjoyable. None of the action is enjoyable. But I found the characters charming enough and enough like witty, funny moments. It's not his funniest, but I didn't completely hate it. I think it's probably D tier. Okay, next up is Snatch. I think Guy Ritchie peaked early. I think Snatch is his best film by far, and it gets the S tier from me. Snatch is like extremely watchable and rewatchable. It's hilarious from start to finish. It's got a good story. It's got a great cast of characters. I mean, who would have thought to cast Brad Pitt as an Irish caravaner guy with a crazy thick accent that even the actual Irish people can't understand? Crazy outside the box casting, and it works. You got Dennis Farina in a fun role. Bullet Tooth Tony, that's Vinnie Jones. This movie is excellent. Bricktop, I fucking love. I love that character and his whole rant about like the definition of nemesis and feeding people to pigs and stuff. Another great character. Jason Statham's really good in this. I think it's Statham's best role, as I scared his name is Turkish. Stephen Graham is great in this. It's crazy to see Stephen Graham in this and then to see him in like more recent stuff because he really changed his persona. Kind of like once he started playing Al Capone on Boardwalk Empire, he's like tough guy actor in all these movies now. Whereas in Snatch, he's like the one kind of like wimpy guy surrounded by tough guys. So it's kind of interesting to see that change there. Just a great cast of characters, really funny. Benicio del Toro steals the show whenever he's on screen. Is Frankie Four Fingers. So such a fun role. I love Snatch. Great movie. Okay, next up is Revolver. This one is like, what the fuck is going on for the vast majority of the runtime? It feels like Guy Ritchie was high off his ass when he wrote and then also when he directed this movie. And not in a good way. Not in a good, weird way, and in the way that like a David Lynch movie is like weird. It's not weird in that way. It's weird as in like extremely messy and convoluted and borderline incomprehensible. Like Tenet. No, not like Tenet. It does have some cool moments. I really like Mark Strong in it. His character's name is Sorter, and he has a pretty damn good shootout in it. But there's also just a lot of nonsense in this movie. The choice to put Jason Statham in a really obvious, really bad toupee for the whole movie is just, it never stops being distracting. Revolver is not good. There's a couple of good moments, but I think it's another D tier. And honestly, that's being generous again. Next up is RocknRolla. Is, I guess, a return to form after Revolver. It's him returning to the well of British gangster movies. It's good, but it does not reach the heights of Lock, Stock, or Snatch. Again, it's got a good cast. Like Tony Kebbell is really convincing in his part, even though he's extremely unlikable. But that's the point. Tom Wilkinson gives a great performance, but his character isn't as distinct or memorable as like Bricktop. And it kind of feels like Guy Ritchie's trying to recapture the magic of Snatch, like the way the ensemble is presented and the types of characters feel like watered down facsimiles of Snatch. That's my main issue with RocknRolla, is it is doing its own thing, and it was an important role for Idris Elba. I think it wasn't exactly like a breakout role. Like The Wire was more of a breakout for him, but RocknRolla was a big film for him, and he's good in it. Tom Hardy's great in it, and he wasn't a huge star yet. Gerard Butler is whatever. He's fine, I guess. Yeah, my main issue is it just feels like a weaker facsimile of Snatch. And for that, I think it's a C. I know a lot of people really love RocknRolla, but I don't like it all that much. I mean, okay, I do like it. I just don't think it's like, I think it's so far below Snatch and even Lock, Stock. Next up is Sherlock Holmes. Obviously, there's been a million different versions of Sherlock Holmes. I don't think this is the best one. It's okay. It's enjoyable. Robert Downey Jr. is he's an enjoyable actor most of the time. He's an odd choice as the great British hero, this American guy, but I guess he does a pretty good job. I find it kind of funny that the whole thing is they kind of turned Sherlock Holmes into an action hero in this one, which he never was in the past. It's an interesting choice, and it certainly makes Guy Ritchie's Sherlock movies distinct in that regards. Like there's all this slow-mo and fight scenes and stuff, and like that's a new side of the character. The idea that he's like so smart that he can beat people up, I find really funny, because that was literally the joke premise of Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub's old Heat Vision and Jack show. The whole premise was that Jack Black was a guy who was so smart he could beat people up with his like intelligence, and that was like meant to be like a joke, like so stupid that it's funny. And then Sherlock Holmes is doing it like in a completely genuine manner. What's his name? Mark Strong is memorable as the villain. He's one of the things I remember most about it. Jude Law is good as Watson, I guess, but I don't know. It's not exactly what I'm looking for in a Sherlock Holmes movie. It's, I'd say, pretty good, not great. For what it is, it's pretty good. I think it's C tier. I'm gonna jump right to the second Sherlock Holmes movie now because I did do two of them. I think it's called Game of Shadows or A Game of Shadows. Kind of forgettable. I think I remember enjoying it about as much as the first movie, but I can't remember fucking anything about the second one. I think there was a scene on a train. I don't know. I know Moriarty was in it, but I couldn't tell you like what his plot was or who played him or anything. Was it Jared Harris? Might have been Jared Harris. I like that actor. He's a talented thespian. I remember liking it as much as the first one, but given that I can't remember anything about it, I think I have to rate it lower for that. Oh, I think Watson gets married in the second one. That's something I remember about it, unless maybe that's the end of the first movie. I don't know. Okay, next up is Wrath of Man, which is his most recent film. It's him teaming up with Jason Statham for the first time in years. I was kind of excited to see it. I was hoping it would be like a return to form for Guy Ritchie, but I don't think so. I didn't like it. I know some people really liked this. I didn't like it pretty much at all. I liked that a character was named Boy Sweat Dave. I think that's a fun character name, but I didn't actually like the character in the slightest. I don't like any of the characters, actually, including Jason Statham's lead character. I don't think is it even supposed to be a twist who he is? It's like it could not be telegraphed any more than it is. So I don't even think it's trying to be a twist, which means the story is just very straightforward. It's non-chronological in a way that doesn't improve the story whatsoever. If you didn't know, Wrath of Man is actually a remake of a French film called Le Convoyeur or something like that. I think the English language title of it is Cash Truck, which I think was the working title of Wrath of Man before they changed it. And Wrath of Man, what a fucking pompous title that is. How pretentious for this movie, Wrath of Man. No, you don't get a title like that for how dumb this movie is. This movie thinks it's so much more clever than it is with its non-chronological story. Everything is, the guy who's the bad guy, that is supposed to be twisted. He's the bad guy. It could not be more obvious. On top of it all, I don't really like the action of this movie. It's not like the worst action. It's not like super shaky or whatever, but I think the choreography leaves a whole lot to be desired. I think it's extremely bare bones. I think the big centerpiece shootout just feels like a much, much, much weaker version of that armored shootout in John Wick Volume 3. I'm not saying they like ripped it off, but I'm saying whatever this movie has, John Wick did much better. And you could say that about like most action movies. John Wick kind of kicks most of their asses. But Wrath of Man I didn't get any enjoyment out of the action in this. And I'm an action movie guy, From the choreography too slow and clunky. Like, Jason Statham's this unstoppable killing machine, but he's just like slowly walking around, popping people. He's not like doing anything impressive. He's not a Keanu Reeves doing, you don't buy that he can kill all these people. He's only killing these people because they're like choosing not to shoot him when he's very slowly walking out in the open. It's like, okay. I mean, anyone can do that if everyone just like, and they hold their fire for him. It's like, I don't know. I didn't like Wrath of Man. So the D tier, honestly, I think I'm going to go E tier. I really didn't like it. This is probably my most negative tier list so far. I really like Snatch. I really like Lock, Stock. I don't care for the rest of his filmography all that much. But we got one left. We have The Gentleman, which is his other most recent film. I think it came out the same year as Aladdin. He made Aladdin, and then he was like, oh, fuck, back to the British gangsters. The Gentleman, supposed to be returned to form. And I was enjoying The Gentleman for much of its runtime, and it really soured for me at a certain point. There are some things that happen in the narrative that I just could not at all get on board with. And it left a bad taste in my mouth when I left the theater after seeing this one. This is a movie I saw at an early screening, and I was going to review it, and just didn't get around to it. I was enjoying it for a lot of the runtime, and it felt like, oh, he's like back in Snatch territory, and it's like really funny, and there's some cool characters. Like McConaughey is, he feels a little bit like he's on autopilot, but he's still doing a good job. And then this character just like falls apart in the like latter half of the movie. I will say though, I think Hugh Grant is great in this movie. I think he gives a fantastic performance. And I also think that Colin Farrell is great in this movie. Colin Farrell is the best part of this movie. Him in his tracksuit, his character, his like coach dude, he's the best part of the movie. If he was the main character and the questionable stuff that really threw me off didn't happen, I would like the movie a whole lot more. The Gentleman, yeah. I guess I should get into a little bit about what soured it for me. Part of it is McConaughey doing his whole pound of flesh thing. I just don't buy it from that character and from in this story. I don't have an issue with the scene. I just don't buy it from that character and in these circumstances. And the other thing is, I mean, not to get all, whatever, but the movie, I think it's really racist, actually. There's like one Chinese character who is the villain, and I feel like they just really did him dirty in a way that it wasn't like, oh, this is one guy who's the villain. It felt like some racism was at play in the screenplay. I don't know. I don't want to be too reactionary or whatever, but that left a bad taste in my mouth. And then there's like the least motivated like rape scene in a mainstream movie that I've seen in a long time. It was like, what is that doing in this movie? It's treated like fluff, not like the heavy, delicate subject that it is. Not that you have to like treat it with kid gloves, but the way that they cast it off as like I don't know. There's a rape scene in here, and they treat it as if someone like dropped a fuck word. It's like treated as if it's like nothing. So stuff like that left a bad taste in my mouth. It had me questioning where Guy Ritchie's intentions were with the piece. And it kind of ruined all the enjoyment that I had gotten up until that point from the humor and from the enjoyable characters. I don't know. I don't know if people are on the same page as me about that. I haven't really like looked into the discourse around this movie, but those things really soured it for me. I think there's a way to tell this story that's like an A-tier story, like with these characters and whatnot, if you took out all the issues I had with it. Those issues, though, honestly, like up until the halfway point, I was really enjoying an A-tier movie. When I left the theater, I had such a bad taste in my mouth, and then upon reflection, the movie has like continued to lower and lower. So it's like halfway through the movie, A tier, right? Leaving the theater, C tier. A month or so later, D tier. Now I think it's like E tier. Like the issues I have with it just keep growing, and the things I liked continue to diminish upon reflection. That's where I'm at. This is undoubtedly the most negative tier list I've done so far. I don't like hate Guy Ritchie or anything. And I mean, there's nothing in the F tier, to be fair. We're definitely weighted toward the bottom, though. But, if you're a big Guy Ritchie fan, that's cool. You're entitled to your own opinion. It'd be a little weird if we agreed on every movie's quality, Art is subjective after all. But, let me know where you rank these movies. Check out my other tier list. Subscribe. And, I'll see you in the next video.